joining me in this Relentless Rundown. We are going to go over the Sunday morning game between the Colts and the Titans. This was an awesome AFC South clash with a lot at stake. My biggest questions coming in for the Colts: could they keep this streak going and make it 3 straight, showing that they were not going to go quietly in this division? As for the Titans, how would they rebound after a monster win last week against the Chiefs, proving that they were an AFC elite team? We're going to go over each team offensively, defensively, and overall, and then we're going to circle back and go over some of the key turning points to finish off the video. If you have any questions or if you disagree with some of my takes, please drop that down below. I would love to debate with you. If you are new to the channel or haven't gotten to it yet, please like and subscribe. It helps me out a ton. It enables me to do what I love so I can keep bringing you the content that you love. With all of that out of the way, let's get into this week's Relentless Rundown. We're going to start with the home team in Indianapolis. Now, they looked okay offensively at times. However, Carson Wentz was clearly bothered by the pressure delivered up front from Tennessee. He struggled to deliver accurate balls for most of this game, which obviously came into play with a couple critical turnovers. The pick that he threw late in the fourth quarter, it was a panic pass and he was just trying to get rid of it and not take the safety. But that was just an unacceptable play, and it ended up really costing the Colts. The one in overtime was actually even worse, believe it or not. As he threw it into triple coverage, he was trying to force it to his main man, Michael Pittman, who was masterful in this game. He had 10 catches, 86 yards, and a couple touchdowns. With 3 defenders there, didn't really have a chance. And the Tennessee Titans were able to easily get another 10 yards and set up the game-winning field goal. The running game for Indianapolis was awesome. They were able to lean on Jonathan Taylor pretty consistently, and he took a ton of pressure off of Carson Wentz. Now, I would have loved for them to lean even more on him. He had just 16 carries. I would have liked to see closer to 20 because he was explosive with the ball in his hands, and he busted off a couple really long ones that were actually taken back off of holding calls. There was a 30-plus and a 20-plus yarder that were both called back, ended up really hurting the Colts, taking some points off of the board potentially, and stalling drives. The last thing that I would touch on offensively for the Colts is that there may be some issues with them moving forward. T.Y. Hilton just doesn't seem to be able to stay healthy, and the Colts in the fourth quarter were actually down to just 3 healthy wideouts in this game. So that made them extremely tired as overtime wore on, and you could see that in their play. On the defensive side for the Colts, they were absolutely excellent, stopping the run and really putting a bunch of pressure on Tannehill then to be able to execute. They were able to also get to him early on after the snap so that he had to force throws and get rid of it quicker than he wanted to, which obviously led to a couple mistakes, especially in that first half where he threw 2 picks. They did have 3 sacks as well, which was great to put the Titans in 3rd down and 2nd and long situations where we know that they are less than ideal. But their penalties, especially critical ones on 3rd down that gave first downs to the Titans, were really poor, and that is going to need to be fixed. On that long catch and run by A.J. Brown, which ended up getting into the end zone for the score, that was just Xavier Rhodes, ex-Minnesota Viking, making a horrible tackle attempt after he allowed the catch for A.J. Brown to break free and get that big gainer. Those kind of huge plays are the ones that turn the tide, and this one was obviously critical as well. That happened right after the Colts thought that they had gotten possession back on a very strange play where Tannehill threw an interception, and then on the return, it looked like the guy fumbled the ball, but the Colts came out with it in the pile. And the referees talked about it for a while and ended up giving the ball back to the Titans for a first down. And that was literally the next play was to A.J. Brown. But I just don't understand how you can pick the ball off, come up with it in the pile, and you don't have possession. So that maybe needs to be looked into because that didn't make any sense. I would say, however, that you can't fumble the ball when you're trying to return it after the pick. So I guess you kind of get what you get when you make that kind of error. Overall, I just feel like the Colts are going to be kicking themselves for not being able to get this win at home. This was a huge opportunity for them to kind of claw back into the AFC South and make up some room on the Titans, and they weren't able to get it done. Not only are they now 3 games behind the Titans, but they obviously lose that head-to-head tiebreaker, which is just going to kill them as the season progresses. Ultimately, it was the turnover battle that ended up losing this game for Indianapolis, and they had multiple opportunities and possessions in overtime to seal the deal, and they still weren't able to move the ball enough to get it done. Thankfully for them, they do get back-to-back games against the Jets and then the Jags, so they should be able to climb back up into that 500 range. However, after that, they get the Bills, and when you look at their schedule the rest of the way, this looks more like a 500 team to me. The Colts really look like they're gonna struggle to find their way into the playoffs, and if they do get in, I don't anticipate it would be anything more than the 7th seed. They're certainly not going to win this division, and they put themselves behind the 8 ball with this loss. Let's now move to the offensive side of the ball for the Titans. Now, without Derrick Henry to lean on in this one, they really looked out of sorts. King Henry had 28 carries for just 68 yards. And with them holding down Henry, a lot of that pressure went to Tannehill. Now, I'm not sure when Derrick Henry's injury actually happened. He did go off of the field in the first quarter fairly early on. And after he came back from that, he just did not look the same. He was getting plugged for 1 or 2 yard or no gains really consistently. And that defensive line from the Colts was ferocious. With that running game faltering, the passing game was barely able to pick up the slack. Without Julio Jones, there were no other options outside of A.J. Brown. Now, he was absolutely magnificent in this one. He had 155 yards in that long touchdown. But without him, there were no other wideouts on the Titans that had over 16 yards. That is not going to do it in an offense where now is going to be without Derrick Henry. So they're going to have to get the ball to other playmakers. Someone else is going to have to step up. Ryan Tannehill just looked uncomfortable and out of rhythm. He finished just 23 out of 33 for 265 yards. He did have 3 touchdowns, but he had 2 really poor picks in the first half that really should have cost the Titans this game. Now, he was able to rebound really well from those 2 mistakes. There's no doubt about it, but he is going to need some more help as the Titans move forward. Tennessee on defense was just subpar, but they did enough to get the win. They created some key turnovers when it mattered late with that epic pick 6, and then they did them one better on the Colts' second try in overtime, picking off Wentz again and giving their offense awesome field position. Up front, they were able to pressure, and it really made Wentz make those poor decisions. Key penalties, especially on pass interference calls, are what is going to haunt this team the most. They finished with 11 penalties for 161 yards. That is not going to get it done when we talk about the elite teams. I was definitely let down by this defense performance after the way they played against the Chiefs. As we look ahead for Tennessee, I think that unless Julio Jones can get healthy, they may really struggle. Now, they did just sign Adrian Peterson, and I really like his fit in this offense. I think he's going to do a lot of the things that Derrick Henry could. Obviously not as well, but he can pound the rock between the tackles, catch it a little bit out of the backfield, and help take some pressure off of Tannehill. They do, however, need someone else on the outside making plays. This offense just looks completely different when they don't have that dual threat of A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. Tennessee has to feel ecstatic about being able to get this win. However, next week against Los Angeles, I really don't like their chances unless Julio is close to 100%. With less than a full week for Adrian Peterson to get acclimated into this offense, I don't like their chances. After that, they get the Saints, who just looked awesome beating Tampa Bay this week. So it could be a rough couple of games next up for the Titans. I really don't think that you can overstate how big of a loss it is to have Henry go down. I think this team now looks a lot more like a 4 seed than they did last week when they beat the Chiefs and had a clear shot at the 1 seed. At this point, their division is all but wrapped up. That's not news. I called that last week when they beat the Chiefs. But moving forward, outside of winning this division, it's going to be tough for them unless they can find a way to get Tannehill some help. Let's now move to some of the turning points in this game, and we're going to start with about 10 minutes to go in the second quarter. The Colts have a 14-7 lead, and Tennessee is looking to get back into this one. Ryan Tannehill takes a big sack to make it 3rd down and 11, which is not where the Titans want to be. As he drops back, he throws his second poor pick of the game. He was trying to go over the middle underneath, but it just wasn't there, and it was a really, really poor read by him. The ball ends up getting picked, and on the return, the returner actually fumbles the ball. Now there's a big dog pile, and the Colts actually come up with it out of the dog pile. However, the refs get together, talk about it. They give the ball back to Tennessee. So I would still love to hear some clarity on what exactly happened, because I don't understand how you can pick it off, get the ball from under the pile, and not end up getting possession. This would be even more critical because the very next play is a giant catch and run for a touchdown to A.J. Brown. It makes it 14-14. The Titans tie it up with 4:13 to go before half. That 57-yard touchdown by A.J. Brown came because of a horrible tackle attempt by Xavier Rhodes. I now want to move late to the third quarter, where the Titans are holding on to a 21-17 lead. The Colts would get the ball in great field position, starting on their own 42. After an awesome first down run by Jonathan Taylor on 3rd down and short, the Colts have a great chance to either get back within a point or to take the lead with a touchdown. Now, Wentz drops back and throws a deep ball into the end zone where his wide receiver is double covered. However, some really poor communication, and I would say just form by the Titans defense, ends up in a 41-yard pass interference call that gives the Colts the ball right at the goal line. If you're the defenders for the Titans, you just have to be in better position. He was covered on this play. There was no chance that he was going to be able to make a catch or even a play on it. However, there was contact clearly before the ball got there, and it would end up causing a 3-yard play action touchdown to old reliable Jack Doyle to give the touchdown and the lead to the Colts. Let's now move to the end of this game. There's about a minute and a half. Indianapolis has the ball. We're tied up at 24, and it's really when Carson Wentz started to crumble. With the ball at their own 8-yard line, Wentz goes back. It looks like he was trying to set up a screen, but this play didn't really have a chance from the get-go. So as he is trying to scramble and get free, he ends up basically panicking and trying to flick it forward to get rid of it and keep his team from getting a safety. What he does, however, is flick it right into the hands of a waiting defender who picks it off and easily scampers in for the pick 6. This would bring the Colts now down a touchdown with under a minute and a half to go and put them in a horrible situation. The Colts were down to just 3 healthy receivers at this point, and it really showed. As they got the ball back, they needed to go the full distance of the field to tie this one up. Carson Wentz actually threw another pick here, but it was negated by an illegal formation that they called before the play actually happened, so the Colts catch a break. They get down to a 3rd down and 16. Wentz throws up a prayer, which is answered by Michael Pittman Jr., who makes an awesome play, leaping over a couple defenders and high-pointing the ball to keep the drive alive and the Colts in the game. On 1st down and 10, just inside Tennessee territory at the 43, another disaster strikes for the defense of the Titans. There's a pass interference, once again right at the goal line, which gives the Colts the ball at the 3. They would be able to capitalize on that by Jonathan Taylor's touchdown run, and we would head to overtime. For me, it was just unacceptable from the Titans to have those 2 pass interference calls in the game's most critical situations. There has to be better communication. Mike Vrabel looked like he wanted to kill somebody. He was absolutely disgusted to see back-to-back critical errors in the game's most important points. In overtime, the Colts would start with the ball, but really wouldn't do much with it, and the same would be said from the Titans. Now, as the Colts got the ball back, they faced a 3rd down and 2, and it was an awesome keeper by Carson Wentz, giving his team a 1st down and a chance to continue the drive. However, the very next play, he makes an absolutely horrible decision, throwing into triple coverage and is picked off. This would be his 2nd decision where you're just trying to figure out what the heck are you thinking, dude? And this one would be the nail in the coffin. This would put the Titans in awesome field position. They only really needed a couple of yards to get into field goal range. They were able to do that on the back of Derrick Henry, and a 45-yard kick from Randy Bullock for the win is good. Tennessee was resilient, even though they didn't look good for much of this game. Tannehill made some poor throws, but Carson Wentz did too, so that was basically a wash. Back and forth, this was a battle, but it was sloppy with 20 total penalties. While the Colts impressed me coming back from some horrible penalties and getting over some injuries, they ultimately couldn't finish. This was an awesome game to watch. I hope you guys got to enjoy it as well. That's all I got for you. If you have any questions or you disagree with some of my thoughts, please drop that down below. If you're new or haven't got to it yet, please like and subscribe. This is Relentless Press. I am your host, Avery Mopats, and we'll see you next time.